Oh.
Looks like you just did.
We're alive. Every year, more than 100 million animals are killed in U.S. laboratories for chemical, drug, food, and cosmetic testing, biology lessons, medical training, and curiosity-driven experiments, according to using animals for medical testing is unethical and unnecessary. That is a lot of animals being cruelly tortured and killed every year. Animal experimentation is a cruel and inaccurate science with many alternatives that scientists do not want to consider. Animals are experimented on every day in very cruel ways. One example of a cruelty occurred in the Virginia Commonwealth University. A rabbit was left in a cage before it was sent through a cage washing system, according to humanesociety.org. These washing systems can reach temperatures up to 180 degrees. The pain and distress that rabbit experienced as she was scolded to death must have been extreme. Another sad example of animal cruelty occurred in the development of Dysport, an anti-wrinkle treatment. A lethal dose 50% test was performed on mice. This test consisted of injecting scores of mice with very powerful toxins to determine when 50% of the mice died. These mice experienced nausea, waves of muscle paralysis, leading them to slowly suffocate to death, according to humanesociety.org. These are only a few examples of the cruelty to animals through animal experimentation. There are many more tests that researchers will perform on animals. Some of the more common animal experimentation tests performed include the eye irritation test and dermal penetration test. The eye irritation test consists of placing a substance in one eye to assess the eye irritation caused by it. Rabbits are usually used for this test. The rabbits are restrained, preventing them from responding naturally. Their eyes are evaluated. The rabbits can suffer from redness, bleeding, ulcers, and even blindness. These rabbits are likely killed upon completion, according to AAVS.org. In the dermal penetration test, the researchers analyzed the movement of a chemical through the skin into the bloodstream. Rats are usually used for this test. After the chemical is administered, the rats are killed, and their bodies are examined to assess the amount of test substance in the rat's system, according to AAVS.org. Besides these acts of cruelty, there are many cases where animal experimentation just doesn't work. Animal experimentation is an incredibly inaccurate science. There are many examples of drugs that are released that are safe on animals, but are disastrous on humans. One of these drugs was called Celert, a medication to treat attention deficit hyperactive disorder. This drug caused liver failure in 13 children. 11 either died or needed liver transplants. There is also the notorious dangerous drug DES that was tested on animals and released. Tens of thousands of people suffered and died as a result of this drug, according to vivisectioninformation.com. Not only are there drugs that are released that are harmful to humans, but there are also drugs not released that would have been very useful in fighting diseases. One of these was fluorine. This was withheld as a cavity prevention because it caused cancer in rats. Another major drug that almost didn't get released was penicillin. Penicillin was ineffective in rabbits, but was tested on a very sick patient because there was nothing else they could do, according to vivisectioninformation.com. Penicillin was the largest medical breakthrough in the last 100 years. One thing most researchers refuse to consider are the many different and more accurate alternatives to animal experimentation. One alternative is 3D in vitro or test tube human liver. This is used to study the breakdown of chemicals in the human body. It mimics human organs and can be used to test cosmetic, drugs, and chemicals, according to PETA.org. Another alternative is using brain imaging and recording techniques like MRIs, EEGs, and CTs. These allow the human brain to be studied down to the level of neurons. Researchers can also temporarily and reversibly induce brain disorders using transcranial magnetic stimulation, according to PETA.org. The final alternative is modular immune in vitro construct test, or MIMIC. This uses human cells to create miniature human immune systems to test the safety and effectiveness of HIV and AIDS vaccines. This test is faster than using animals and more efficient, according to PETA.org. Those in favor of animal experimentation will tell you that animals are protected, that the United States of America put into effect the Animal Welfare Act of 1966. They will tell you that this act sets high standards of care on research animals with regards to their housing, feeding, cleanliness, ventilation, and medical needs, according to using animals for medical testing is both ethical and essential. However, this law doesn't protect all animals. Mice, rats, birds, reptiles, and amphibians are excluded from even the minimal protection of the Federal Animal Welfare Act, according to using animals for medical testing is unethical and unnecessary. Another thing those in favor of animal experimentation will argue is that humans are worth animals' lives. Honestly, does that seem right? What if we could experiment on a mentally impaired human and could save thousands of people's lives? Is it worth it? Even if we are putting them through painful and cruel experiments? Is experimenting on animals really that different? Another issue those in favor of animal experimentation will argue is that there are no other alternatives. As addressed earlier, there are many other alternatives to animal experimentation. The truth is, researchers just don't want to consider them. They would rather just keep abusing all these animals. As people of this country, we need to make them realize what they are doing is wrong. We need to make them use other alternatives than destroying animals' lives. Animal experimentation is a very cruel and unnecessary form of research. It causes many drugs to be passed when they are unsafe for humans, as well as causing drugs to be withheld that would have been very medically beneficial. We could resolve these many issues by using alternatives to animal experimentation. 3 forms of alternatives include 3D in vitro or test tube human livers, brain imaging and recording techniques, and modular immune in vitro construct or mimic. These are all very effective and accurate alternatives to animal experimentation. The researchers that perform animal experimentation refuse to consider these alternatives. As citizens of this country, we need to make them consider them. We need to protect these animals. We are their only hope. Is a whine from a dog any different than a cry from a human?